Definiteness of inner command is the foundation upon which mastery of self is built, because no man or woman can truly direct the outer world until the throne of the inner world is seized and secured, and this inner command does not come by chance or by wishful thinking, but by a deliberate act of will, forged through the discipline of thought and the conscious choice to respond with strength rather than react with weakness. And it is this mastery that separates the leader from the follower, the victor from the victim, the one who shapes destiny from the one who is carried helplessly by circumstance. For when you possess definiteness of inner command, you cease to be a puppet of emotion and become the architect of purpose. And it is in this moment that the great secret of all achievement reveals itself, that the mind, once directed with firmness and clarity, becomes the most powerful instrument on earth, capable of transforming failure into fuel and obstacles into opportunities. And this power is not reserved for the few, but lies dormant in every individual waiting to be awakened by the voice of decision. For indecision breeds reaction, while decision breeds response, and response is the mark of true power, because it is guided by principle, not impulse, by vision, not confusion, and by discipline, not chaos. And the one who daily trains himself to command his own thoughts creates a fortress no circumstance can penetrate, because the storms of anger, fear, doubt, and criticism may rage outside, but the mind under command remains unshaken, calmly directing action with precision. And in this definiteness lies the seed of greatness, for no empire was ever built by a man who reacted without thought, and no legacy was ever written by one who surrendered to impulse. But every monument of progress, every victory of the spirit, and every triumph of destiny was carved by those who ruled themselves first, who set before their minds a clear direction and compelled every thought, every emotion, every action to fall in line with that vision. And this is the discipline that transforms weakness into strength, that turns wandering energy into laser focus, that raises a person above the level of the common crowd and crowns him with the authority of leadership. For the masses move by reaction, tossed about like leaves in the wind of circumstance, but the few who command themselves move like mountains, immovable, deliberate, unyielding, and the world bends to their will because they have bent themselves first. They have bent their fears, their doubts, their temptations, their impulses, until only command remains, and this definiteness of inner command becomes the compass by which they navigate life, never swayed by the noise of others, never enslaved by criticism or praise, never weakened by distraction, but always advancing with certainty, because when the mind knows its master and the master knows his goal, then nothing can shake his path. And in this state, life itself begins to respond, opportunities are attracted, resources align, people respect and follow, because human nature is drawn to strength. And strength is born only in the crucible of self-command, and once you have tasted this power, you can never return to the weakness of reaction, because you will know that to command the mind is to command fate, to rule the self is to rule destiny, and to stand with definiteness of inner command is to stand unshaken, unbroken, unstoppable, a living proof that man is not the servant of circumstance, but the master of it, not the prisoner of emotion, but the captain of response. And in that response lies the key to every triumph the human soul is capable of. Self-suggestion shapes power, because every thought planted in the soil of the mind takes root and grows until it bears fruit in action. And the fruit of those actions becomes the harvest of your destiny. For the mind is never neutral. It is always listening, always absorbing, always shaping in the words you speak to yourself each morning, the whispers you allow to echo in your heart throughout the day. They are not idle or meaningless. They are commands to the subconscious, orders to the hidden forces of your spirit, instructions to the unseen mechanism of creation within you. And the truth is that what you repeat with conviction becomes reality, because repetition engraves belief, and belief directs behavior, and behavior writes destiny. And this is why those who fail spend their mornings feeding themselves with doubts, excuses, fears, and complaints, and those who succeed spend their mornings declaring faith, courage, strength, vision, and determination. For self-suggestion is the steering wheel of the mind. It is the compass of the soul. It is the invisible law that transforms thought into experience. And it is not a question of whether it works, but only a question of how it is used. Because you cannot escape its influence, you can only choose its direction. And if you choose to speak defeat, you are programming defeat. If you choose to speak fear, you are programming fear. If you choose to speak weakness, you are programming weakness. But if you choose to speak victory, you are programming victory. If you choose to speak confidence, you are programming confidence. If you choose to speak strength, you are programming strength. And once this truth becomes fixed in your mind, you will realize that every morning is a sacred opportunity to program your future. Every sunrise is a new page waiting to be written by the pen of self-suggestion. And those who take this seriously will rise above those who take it lightly, because life responds not to what you want casually, but to what you affirm repeatedly with burning conviction. And this is why the greatest men and women of history were masters of their own self-talk. They commanded their minds with words of discipline. They conditioned themselves with affirmations of power. They persuaded their subconscious that victory was inevitable until victory became reality. And so it is with you. For you may not control every circumstance. You may not command the winds of life, but you can command your inner sails through the steady voice of suggestion. And by doing so, you determine how far you will travel and how great the heights you will reach, because the subconscious does not argue. It accepts, it obeys, it acts. And if you feed it strength, it builds a fortress. If you feed it weakness, it builds a prison. If you feed it courage, it builds wings. If you feed it fear, it builds chains. And when you truly grasp this, you will treat every word you speak to yourself as gold. You will guard your affirmations as treasures. You will repeat them until they burn like fire in your soul. And you will notice that little by little, thought by thought, suggestion by suggestion, you are reshaping your habits, your outlook, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. Because self-suggestion is not a trick or a game. It is the eternal law of the mind, and the one who learns to use it with definiteness writes his own story, lifts himself above the crowd, and discovers that the greatest power on earth has always been hidden within his own repeated words. Calmness is strength, because the one who remains calm in the midst of storms holds command not only over himself, but over the situation. And this power cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It must be cultivated within the depths of the mind until it becomes a natural state. For anger is weakness, panic is surrender, fear is blindness, but calmness is mastery, calmness is clarity, calmness is the fortress of the wise and the weapon of the strong, and it is always the calm soul that sees clearly, decides firmly, and acts effectively, while the restless and reactive destroy their own advantage through haste and confusion. And when you observe the patterns of history, you will find that the greatest victories were not won by the loudest voices or the quickest tempers, but by the steady minds who kept their vision intact, while others lost themselves in emotional storms. And this is the essence of strength, to hold the power to act without being pushed by impulse, to maintain balance when the ground shakes, to speak with authority when others tremble in noise. For calmness is not weakness, it is not passivity. It is the highest form of controlled energy, the silent discipline that commands respect without demanding it, the invisible force that bends outcomes without shouting for them, and those who train themselves in calmness possess an advantage no enemy can steal, because no insult can move them, no criticism can pierce them, no fear can chain them, no doubt can poison them. For their composure is their shield, and their stillness is their sword. And once you begin to see that every reaction of anger drains you, every burst of panic blinds you, every surrender to fear weakens you, you will also see that every act of calmness strengthens you, every moment of stillness restores you, every decision made with patience empowers you. And the truth is that calmness is not a gift but a choice. It is not an accident but a habit. It is trained daily in the little irritations, in the minor conflicts, in the small temptations to react. And each time you choose calm over reaction, you are building a reservoir of power. You are sharpening a blade of clarity. You are preparing yourself for the greater battles of life. For when challenges arrive in their full force and chaos surrounds you, it will not be the strong of muscle or the quick of tongue who prevail, but the one who can hold steady, who can breathe when others choke, who can see the path when others are blinded by their own frenzy. And when you master calmness, you no longer live as a victim of moods. You no longer hand your power to circumstances. You no longer allow others to dictate your state of mind, because you have chosen to anchor yourself in the immovable strength of composure. And that composure becomes your greatest weapon in negotiation, in leadership, in relationships, in every field of endeavor. For people trust the calm, they follow the calm, they respect the calm, and the world bends toward those who stand like mountains, unshaken, silent yet commanding, because in their presence others find stability, and in their example others find guidance. And when you rise each day with the intent to remain calm no matter what comes, you are declaring to the world that nothing can shake your command. And when life sees that you cannot be provoked into weakness, it begins to yield opportunities to your strength. Because calmness is not just the absence of reaction, it is the presence of mastery. And in that mastery lies the essence of all power. Vision before emotion is the discipline that separates the leader from the follower, the creator from the drifter, the builder from the destroyer. For emotions are waves that rise and crash with sudden force, but vision is the compass that holds steady when storms rage. And the truth is that those who allow emotion to rule their choices are forever prisoners of circumstance, reacting to every slight, every fear, every impulse. Yet those who place vision first rise above the temporary noise of feelings and see beyond the present moment. And in this clarity lies the seed of greatness. For emotion without vision is like fire without direction. It burns wildly, consuming everything in its path. But vision before emotion is like fire contained within a furnace, driving engines of progress, forging iron into steel and transforming energy into creation. And when you understand this, you will no longer be deceived by the rush of anger, the fog of doubt, the sting of jealousy, or the weight of fear, because you will measure each feeling against the larger picture, asking not what the emotion demands in this instant, but what the vision requires for the future. And in this act you rise above the level of ordinary men who lose themselves in reaction. And you enter the realm of mastery, where every choice is deliberate, every action is aligned, every step is moving toward a destination. And this is why the world rewards those who are guided by vision, because they can be trusted in crisis, they can be relied upon in leadership, they can be followed in uncertainty. For while others drown in emotional waves, they walk steadily on the path their vision has drawn. And this discipline is not natural but trained. It is not given but earned. For the human heart will always surge with feelings, and the mind will always be tempted to bow before them. But when you decide that vision rules above emotion, you begin to cultivate a new order within yourself. You begin to silence impulses with purpose. You begin to weigh anger against goals. You begin to measure fear against destiny. You begin to filter desire through discipline. And in this practice, you carve out strength that few possess. Because it is easy to let emotions dictate. It is easy to lash out in anger. It is easy to surrender to fear. It is easy to quit when discouraged, but it is strength to keep the vision intact and let that vision guide your response. And once this principle is mastered, you will find that emotions no longer weaken you but serve you, because they become energy directed by vision rather than forces that scatter and waste your power. And so anger becomes fuel for persistence, fear becomes signal for preparation, excitement becomes spark for creativity, sorrow becomes depth for wisdom, and all emotions find their rightful place beneath the authority of vision. And this is the difference between being controlled and being in control. For the man without vision is forever a slave to his emotions, while the man with vision makes his emotions servants of his destiny. And when you rise each day and remind yourself of where you are going, when you picture with definiteness the life you are building, when you keep the vision vivid before the eyes of your imagination, then the waves of emotion that once tossed you now bow to the clarity of your direction, and every choice becomes easier, every trial becomes lighter, every setback becomes temporary, because vision has already declared the destination, and no passing storm of emotion can alter the course once vision has taken command. Response unlocks growth because every challenge of life is not in the event itself, but in the way you choose to meet it. And the truth is that life will always present trials, difficulties, and obstacles. But these are never the final judge of destiny. It is your response that decides whether they become stepping stones or stumbling blocks, whether they shape your rise or signal your fall, and this is why two people can face the same situation, and one will crumble while the other will grow stronger, for the difference is never the circumstance but the response. And response is not born in the heat of the moment. It is cultivated in the discipline of the mind, trained through self-control, strengthened by clarity of purpose, and guided by the inner voice of wisdom. And when you understand this, you will see that reaction is weakness because it surrenders to impulse. But response is strength because it pauses, it thinks, it chooses, and in that moment of choice lies the power of growth. For every difficulty you respond to with patience enlarges your capacity for endurance. Every insult you respond to with calmness deepens your mastery over self. Every setback you respond to with faith strengthens your vision. Every failure you respond to with learning multiplies your wisdom. And each of these responses builds upon the other until you rise above the level of ordinary existence. And this is the law that governs all progress, that nothing outside has the power to defeat you unless you hand over your power by reaction, but everything outside can become the instrument of your growth if you take command by response. And it is here that greatness is born, because the common man reacts to life and is tossed about like a leaf in the wind, while the uncommon man responds to life and bends the wind itself to carry him forward. And when you train your mind to respond, you discover that problems no longer break you, they build you. Pain no longer stops you, it instructs you. Fear no longer chains you, it sharpens you. And criticism no longer wounds you, it directs you. And this transformation is not a miracle, but a discipline. For each day presents countless opportunities to practice response in the traffic that tests your patience, in the disagreements that test your temper, in the disappointments that test your faith, in the delays that test your persistence, and each time you choose response over reaction, you are exercising the muscle of growth. And the more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes, until one day you find that nothing outside can move you without your permission. And in that moment you are free. In that moment you are powerful. In that moment you are unstoppable, because the world can throw stones, but you decide whether they bruise you or build you a foundation. The world can throw storms, but you decide whether they sink you or carry you to new shores. The world can throw trials, but you decide whether they crush you or refine you. And this freedom is the highest form of strength, because it means that no circumstance can dictate your destiny. Only your response can, and when your response is always growth, always wisdom, always faith, always calmness, then your life becomes an upward spiral. Every experience adds to your strength, every day adds to your wisdom, every trial adds to your greatness, because response is not just the key to survival, it is the door repetition creates dominion, because the mind is shaped not by what it hears once, but by what it hears again and again, until the thought becomes fixed, until the word becomes law, until the habit becomes automatic. And this is the great secret of mastery, that every lasting achievement is the child of repetition. For knowledge once heard can be forgotten, but knowledge repeated becomes understanding, and action once taken can be resisted, but action repeated becomes habit, and habit once formed becomes destiny. And so it is that the one who practices deliberately, the one who repeats with purpose, the one who affirms with persistence, gradually gains dominion over himself, over his mind, over his environment, because repetition engraves the pathways of power into the very structure of the brain, creating patterns that direct behavior without struggle, making strength natural and discipline automatic. And this is why the weak fall into cycles of defeat, because they repeat thoughts of doubt and speak words of fear until weakness becomes their normal state, while the strong rise into cycles of victory because they repeat thoughts of courage and speak words of strength until power becomes their normal state. And the truth is that repetition is never neutral. It is always working for you or against you. It is always building chains or building wings. It is always pulling you down into slavery or lifting you up into mastery. And when you see this, you will realize that every word you speak to yourself, every image you allow in your mind, every action you repeat each day is either carving the path to dominion or digging the pit of defeat. And this law applies to all areas of life. For the athlete who repeats his drills with intensity gains dominion over his body. The thinker who repeats study and reflection gains dominion over knowledge. The leader who repeats disciplined decisions gains dominion over men. And the dreamer who repeats vision with persistence gains dominion over destiny. And though the results may not appear quickly, repetition works in silence, building brick upon brick, shaping unseen foundations until one day what was once effort becomes instinct, what was once struggle becomes ease, what was once training becomes nature, and the world looks on in awe, calling it talent or genius, when in truth it was only repetition, the daily laying of one stone upon another, the consistent planting of the same seed until the harvest could no longer be denied, and is why dominion does not belong to the impatient, it belongs to the persistent. For impatience seeks quick results and quits when they do not appear, but persistence repeats, knowing that each repetition is power, each repetition is progress, each repetition is dominion. And when the weak surrender, the persistent grow stronger, and when the distracted scatter, the focused advance, and when the doubtful retreat, the faithful continue, and dominion becomes theirs because repetition has given it to them. And so it must be with your own mind, that if you desire strength, you must repeat strength until it becomes your identity. If you desire calmness, you must repeat calmness until nothing can shake you. If you desire vision, you must repeat vision until it burns unshakably in your imagination. And if you desire greatness, you must repeat greatness until every fiber of your being accepts it as natural. And in this way, repetition does not only build habit, it builds character, it builds destiny, it builds the unshakable authority that comes only from dominion. And once you hold this dominion within yourself, the world outside can no longer control you because you have already mastered the only kingdom that matters, the kingdom of your own mind, and in that dominion lies the power to create, to command, to rise and to reign, to expansion, the secret to mastery, the path to a life of endless growth.